Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Community Investments webinar for Mental Health Awareness Month. We are so excited that all of you are able to join us. Thank you so much for partnering with us today to learn more about how your mental health and your small business matter. Today, we have such a wealth of knowledge of people who have agreed to come on and talk from not only a mental health standpoint, but also a financial coaching and wellness standpoint, which is very important as all of us small business owners are starting to flood in here. You're going to recognize that you have something that might speak to you specifically as a small business owner. And obviously the mental health component, it just goes across the board. It's applicable to all of us. And so hopefully you're able to find something that is beneficial and helpful for you as you pursue your career and all your other pursuits. Thank you to all of our panelists who are joining today. I'm going to get right into those bios. I'm Sonia Alcazar Collier. I am the Director of Communications and Public Relations for New Community Investments. And we have some people from our team here who will get to introduce them in just a little bit. You'll notice that we do have a chat option, and Sarah Wells Bowens is our chat moderator, so we can say hi to Sarah. Hey, Sarah. Sarah, do you have any chat housekeeping that you would like to let us know about before we begin?
Just feel free to send any questions that may come up throughout the panel, and I'll make sure to take note of it, and then we'll get to them at the end.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. Before I get into our bios, I do want to introduce our CEO, the woman who is leading the charge of this fearless, actually, it's not fearless. Sometimes there is a little fear involved with being a CEO. Come on, we can be honest here. This is Mental Health Awareness Month. We can be honest. But Kimberly Stotzer has so graciously lent her time to come here. Kim, can you just introduce yourself and tell everyone why we as a financial institution decided to do something for Mental Health Awareness Month?
Yeah, thank you, Sonia, and thank you for facilitating all of this and bringing it together. It's really important when we look at things like business success, business leadership, to think about mental health. Honestly, mental health isn't just a way to be kind to ourselves and to love ourselves. It is that, and it's important, but it also factors greatly into the success of our relationships and our work life, especially for small business owners. I think things like mental health and self-care in general can really take a back seat to trying to drive things forward, but it's a strategic priority. When we put things like mental health in a position of priority in our life, it actually on the long run has great dividends that really pay out. So we're hoping that, some of our clients that are trying to drive their business forward will take a moment to consider how this can be a part of that.
Thank you, Kim. And one thing that you'll find interesting for our attendees is that some of our mental health professionals are small business owners. And so not only will they be giving some professional opinions and education and suggestions, but it's also coming from a place of actually walking through this as a small business owner. And so we super appreciate you giving us some background in that as well. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panelists and then we'll jump right in. So first up, we have Sabrina Santiago. Sabrina is a licensed marriage and family therapist and small business owner. She received her master's degree from Pepperdine University, Graduate School of Education and Psychology. She has been running a private practice for the last 7 years. Sabrina works with various clients with varying needs, specializing in cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness, and taking a client-centered approach to treatment. She is currently training for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, also known as EMDR therapy. She also runs a parenting group for parents of neurodivergent teenagers. Welcome, Sabrina. Alex Iacovitti. Alex is also a small business owner. He is the owner of a therapy group called Alia Therapy, where he specializes in relationship and couples therapy. This includes romantic partners, parent-child relationships, and business partners. So those of you who are looking to strengthen your business relations from B2B or B2C, Alex is going to give a lot of feedback on that topic. Alex is trained in attachment-focused therapy that looks to strengthen communication and foster deeper connections. Alex works with a diverse population of clients with a variety of presenting concerns. He also has advanced training in trauma and working with men. Welcome, Alex. Tamika Lewis. Tamika, a licensed clinical social worker and small business owner, owner of Women of Color Therapy. She is a writer, speaker, and mental health expert here in Los Angeles. She provides individual and group counseling with an emphasis on helping women and teens overcome anxiety and depression. Tamika is trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, in the grief recovery method, and EMDR therapy. As a mental health expert, Tamika draws from over 10 years of experience working in agencies such as UCLA Medical Center and Child and Family Guidance Center. In 2011, Tamika published her first book called Next Generation Graduate, College Readiness for Low-Income Students. She integrates laughter and storytelling into every session, leaving clients feeling lighter and more hopeful. Welcome, Tamika. Yvette Vivanco. With over 15 years in the social work field and financial coaching, Yvette has worked with immigrant communities, families, and micro entrepreneurs, including street vendors. She graduated from Woodbury University with her MBA and earned a bachelor's degree in social work from Cal State Los Angeles. Yvette is proud to be the first college graduate in her family and formerly a dreamer. She understands the struggles of living as an undocumented person in the United States and jumping on opportunities to build generational wealth for future generations. Welcome, Yvette. Kimberly Stotzer. Prior to being appointed as CEO of New Community Investments, Kim was Executive Vice President at NCI. She is an innovation expert with over 20 years of experience in strategic analysis, strategy development and planning, DEI enhancement, and new product and program initiation. Partnering with LA County, Kimberly launched the Solid Ground Homelessness Prevention Program, which is now adopted by the City of LA's Community Investment for Families Department Homelessness Program. Kimberly is also a small business expert and sought-after speaker for local business chambers, leadership organizations, and various financial industry thought leadership. Welcome to all of our panelists. All right. Well, without further ado, I'm just going to jump in right to the first question. And this is actually, Kim, if you can start us off with this. How does the mental health of small business owners differ from that of employees in a larger organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's not even necessarily that one is categorically more difficult than the other, because in a larger organization, if the culture is great, it can really help. But if the culture is suboptimal, it can make it really challenging to feel pressured under hierarchy in a culture that isn't really healthy. But for small business owners, the fact that they get to choose the culture, they have the freedom to decide what they're going to strategically focus on. It's the same freedom that draws entrepreneurs that often really stresses them out once they get into that. And I'm saying that as someone who's started businesses myself and who my husband's an entrepreneur. At the end of the day, the self-management that we so long for can actually be the very thing that really kind of drives us crazy. And so I find that entrepreneurs, there's this onus to wear every hat and to do everything. And in fact, you can maybe do everything, but not at the same time, right? And there comes a point when doing everything isn't even the best solution to take you toward the results that you want, even from a business perspective. So I think that being cognizant of common mental health challenges and just general business challenges that other entrepreneurs face is really important for entrepreneurship. I think even leading a small business, let's say you aren't the one who started it, you're not the founder, but you're now the leader of it. In that situation, I find that there are really, really common trends, really common challenges that everyone faces, but it's also very common for leaders of small businesses to be a little isolated socially, right? There's so much work to do, working at all these hours. And then if you have a family or you're in school or you have a day job in addition to this business, right? It's like the network to other entrepreneurs can be something that isn't developed as much as it could be. And that makes you feel like you're going crazy and you should have it all together and you don't. And so there's a bit of loneliness in dealing with the stress and kind of the chaos of being a small business owner. I think when we're in a larger organization, again, different challenges, right? Maybe the culture above you or below you feels a bit toxic. Maybe it's not safe to have open communication. Maybe there's a lot of shaming and labeling and, different things that could be going on. But one of the benefits to being in a large organization is if it's large, you're probably not the only one experiencing it. So you know you're not crazy because there are other people who are seeing the same thing you are and feeling the same thing you are. And so, like I said, it's not that it's easier or harder, it's just really different. And I would really first of all give a kudos to any small business owner that went out of their way to watch something like this, live or recorded or whatever, to really kind of take some steps to get a grip on, like, thinking about our thoughts, and realizing that it's a stressful position to be in and that we need to take some steps proactively to manage that stress.
Yes, yes, and that's good too, because there might be this idea that the grass is greener. Why don't I just go and work, at a place that has an employee model, or maybe the employee is saying, why don't I just be a small business owner, thinking that one of them is going to be better than
Yeah.
the other when they each have their own unique set of challenges. So that's great. Shifting a little bit to, I want to talk about this from a financial standpoint. Yvette, if you could take this one. What are some common financial challenges that you've heard of when you are working with your small businesses and entrepreneurs? What are some of those challenges that they face, and how might these challenges then impact their mental health?
Thank you, Sonia. That's a great question. One of the things that I really hear is just lack of information. I don't know where to go for certain things, or there's just too much information. Which one applies to me? Do I have to get A through C, or can I just get A through B? It's overwhelming. And one of the things that we do here with financial coaching and how we guide our clients, it's really by just focusing on what they need. Maybe right now the first thing is to find out what's the information that they need for their business. So we'll work together to find that goal and address it and put steps on it so we know where to go, and then check in again and see where that's going. How is that working? That also helps with their mental well-being. I mean, as Kim was saying, there's a lot of people that have a family too. So there's the stress of that. So maybe also having a part-time job. So there could be also stress of that as well. So knowing that, there is a lot that the person might be focusing on, and really just addressing one thing at a time, setting a goal and a purpose one at a time, and addressing those things as they go along. And knowing that sometimes you can't have all the answers, and knowing that you can also reach out for resources and for help somewhere else. It's key to your mental well-being.
It's almost like make sure that you have a one step at a time approach instead of I need to do all of these things by this date. That can be a really overwhelming place, but also it feels like as a small business owner, there's so many things that need to be done by this deadline that it's hard to just take a step-by-step approach. You're like, let me see how many tasks I can actually do in one day, when that could inadvertently produce burnout, but make you feel overwhelmed. So I'm all about that step-by-step model. Tamika, in the same regard, in your profession, working with specifically the demographic that you work with, what are some common mental health challenges that are faced by small business owners, and how might these challenges then impact them on the business side?
That's a great question, Sonia, and thank you so much for doing this. Just because the challenges that you face as a small business owner around this mental health piece are real, and I'm speaking from the trenches of just things that I am in real time still continuing to kind of work through. But one of those is really burnout and decision fatigue. In therapy, we call it compassion fatigue. It's a point where, we've just kind of done too much, or just feel like we've gone the extra mile with clients, and we need time to go back in and recharge and recollect ourselves. And so I think being a small business owner, you are left to make a lot of decisions on your own, and you can experience that decision fatigue, that brain fog, and that burnout. And so something that's really important along the way as we're feeling the excitement and the adrenaline of building our baby, or, our idea baby, right? It's so exciting to kind of to talk about and be with all the time. But at the same time, we have to slow down and pay attention to our body and notice like what are the signals that our body are giving to us, as far as like the need for rest or the need for a break, and really try not to override those signals, which can be hard when you're excited about building a business.
I have never heard decision fatigue. That's a new one. That's great. I've heard fatigue in insert every other word, and I've never heard decision fatigue. And that is like just being an adult. You have decision fatigue. That is a real catchphrase. I like it, but I don't like it, right? Because you don't want to have decision fatigue. To any of our other mental health professionals, if you would like, I would love to hear what you think in terms of some of the small business owners, or you as yourself as a small business owner. What are some of those mental health challenges that you're aware of that can then impact not only your business, but how you do business, especially Alex, from your vantage point? I know you work with relationship building. How are you seeing some of the people in your world experience how their relationships are affected in business based on their mental health?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so one thing I'll say is that there's like this never-ending list of things that you can do when you own a business. You could always be doing more marketing, more, networking, and all these things. And so I think it makes it really difficult to have proper boundaries around work. And so oftentimes that's what I see with distress with couples, is that there is this difficulty in like setting boundaries with work, but also with employees. When I worked with business owners and have worked with business owners, there's this difficulty of even telling employees no, right, and setting the boundary there. And so I think that I'm super glad that Tamika brought up burnout, and also Kim as well, bringing up isolation. Like those are key, I think, parts, right, that I was going to add as well. But I think, I think boundaries is another one I'd add to that list if people really struggle with that.
Sabrina, did you want to chime in on that?
No, they kind of covered all the points that I was gonna bring up: the burnout, the isolation, love, decision fatigue. That's such a great phrase. Yeah, it can be, they kind of hit on everything.
That's great. That's great. No problem.
And
Excuse me.
I was surprised that you said, I never heard of decision fatigue. I'm glad that somebody said it then. I'm very familiar with that phrase. And
Right.
it's not unique to small business owners, but it is, because small business owners wear so many hats, and you have to make decisions from each hat. And so the exhaustion, right, that comes from just, you don't want to answer another question. Also something that happens to parents of young children. Now that I think about it, lots of different situations to get into that. But I agree, just with everything that was brought up. I think there's I don't know if stigma is too strong a word, but in some ways I see small business owners, looking at themselves as superheroes. You kind of have to, right? I've got all this inside of me. I'm going to do all these great things. And so the moment to really stop and kind of say, I have limits, like Alex said, I need boundaries. My time and energy is limited. I need to do some energy management. All of that stuff is
Right.
so important to just admit. And it doesn't mean that you're not an amazing business owner. It just means that you're a human business owner.
Yeah.
And, if we manage our energy, not just our time, but also our energy, we can actually be even more successful, which is kind of the point, right?
Right. Right. Alex, I wanted to see what you had in terms of feedback on. There's this idea sometimes as a small business owner that, we do have it all together. We're very polished, and, we can, but then there are those moments where we might be in an interaction, or, something relationship based, where we're not even noticing that we're having a display of, you know, some anxieties coming out in your conversation there. Maybe your tone is a little bit, what are some of these ways that we as the small business owner can identify that, hey, your mental health is actually manifesting in the way that you work and some of those day-to-day things that you do, what kinds of things can we be looking for that can let us know, maybe I need to tap into some mental health professional here?
Yeah, great question. I love this question. I think one big thing that I see in terms of like managing anxiety, a lot of people will turn to micromanaging. And so I notice that that comes in a lot. You know, just having control over work feels like you're having control over something at least. And so, but what I see is that that really impacts the ability to collaborate with people and ultimately can make things work. And now you have more on your plate, and kind of just creates this rigid kind of environment. And then also, you know, this negative self-talk tends to come up of kind of beating themselves up, which also makes it hard to take risks for the business. And so there might be a little bit more, again, rigidity, you know, hesitancy and taking some necessary risk for the company. Again, it's vulnerable, right? Taking risks, especially when you're the face of the company. And so I think a lot of people will just avoid that, right, if possible, especially if they believe that they're going to fail. It's like, yeah, why would you take that risk? But I think that the other one, you know, that I would say is, again, I love that Tamika mentioned burnout, because I think when you experience burnout, there can be like a dip in like quality of work. And I think that a lot of people will notice that slipping because when you're overwhelmed, I think that people tend to focus on getting the work done, and that becomes the most important thing rather than, you know, what might be right for the company or doing things like, well, I think it's more, I just want to get this over with. And I think that that's where I see a lot of people it come up for people in their day-to-day. But yeah, I think that those are the main ones I would touch on.
Sabrina, same question for you. How have you witnessed some of, and obviously with disclosure, but how have you seen some of this for your clients in terms of have they brought up to you, I'm noticing that this and this is happening, and maybe they don't attribute it automatically to their mental health being a factor of what they're experiencing?
Yeah, there's a lot of times when they talk about like, I don't want to go to work anymore, when before they had a lot of passion for the work, where they're like, I'm super passionate about this. I want to go and create my dream. But then they come and they're like, I barely got to work today because I just couldn't get out of bed for the longest time. Or, you know, simple tasks are taking way longer. Like, for example, writing a super bill for a client, like that should take maybe 5 minutes. And you're like, why is this taking me an hour? You know? Trouble focusing on a lot of things. Like they forget to take care of themselves with their bodies as well. Like they're not eating or drinking throughout the day. Like a lot of those things kind of come up that sort of pinpoint like, hey, something's going on. Your mental health is really being affected. Also forgetting stuff. They're like, I used to be on top of things like that, and now I'm scatterbrained all the time. So, but yeah, that's kind of what I see.
I just thought it was being 40, you know, I at least that's what I tell everyone. No, this actually is a legit thing though, right? Because there is the like, sometimes I have the mom brain fog, then I have the, you know, working brain fog, and then I'm like legitimately can't remember, and then I double book it. But I like what you said. It's just that someone might just communicate like what used to bring me excitement and passion. And then sometimes we think that I'm not supposed to be doing that anymore because it doesn't excite me and bring passion. When actually it's probably the best place for you. We just need to identify what really is going on from a mental health standpoint so that you can find that excitement again. And that could be sad, right? For some people who are feeling like, well, maybe this was the wrong step. Maybe this is the wrong career field. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. All those the self-talk that we do, talking ourselves out of something that we built because it's actually a mental health issue than it is, you're not really cut out for this. So that's something to think about. Excuse me. I want to talk about a little bit about how to actually work through these things. So Sabrina, what are some effective techniques for small business owners to maintain a healthy work-life balance and prioritize their mental well-being? And this is actually for everyone as well, but Sabrina, if we can start with you.
Yeah, I found that organization organizing yourself with you like calendars, whether for some people like a written calendar can be really helpful because not only is it something physical that you can touch and hold on to, the act of writing things down helps with like the memory piece. And boundaries for yourself as well, like set time off and including time off where you don't have to do anything. Because we talk about vacations, and a lot of times vacations are like, well, we have to do all these things because we're going somewhere. And it's like, no. Just take a time where you can just lay on the bed like a starfish and you can just stay there for an hour if you want. And that's good enough to help like give yourself some time to sort of reset. Again, like I said, eating and hydrating throughout the day is really key because your body needs fuel, your mind needs fuel in order to keep going. And hobbies, I think, are a really great sort of source as like an outlet in terms of like taking all of this pent up frustration that maybe you're having over the job and doing something productive with it rather than letting it just sit there and take over you. I kind of look at it through it's called spoon theory, where every day you wake up and you have a certain number of spoons of yourself to give to the world. But at the end of the day, you always have to keep one spoon for you. Because if you don't keep one spoon for you, you're eventually going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel of who you are and you'll have nothing left to give. So I kind of like with clients, it's like maybe you wake up with 3 spoons that day, and that's really hard because now you have to prioritize what's going to get the other 2 spoons, but you have to keep one of them for yourself. So
I love that. I've heard of that technique years ago and I forgot about it. And that is such a great analogy, even if you don't have the spoon in front of you right now. But just think about that for those of us who are watching. How many spoons that, and so just to go back to this, is the theory that you only have 5 spoons for the day?
I kind of change it up. Like sometimes, like I personally, like sometimes I wake up with like 10 spoons and I'm like, okay, I've got so much stuff that I can do today. I've got the energy, I have the willpower. And then other days I'm like, ooh, I only have like 3. Okay, today we're
Okay.
going to prioritize certain things. And it's okay that I'm putting the other stuff down for the next day because I will get to it eventually. I'm not ignoring it. I'm just making sure that I'm taking care of myself so that way I can get to them.
That's great. So we have the spoon technique. Tamika, same question. What are some practical steps that a small business owner can take to usher in a work-life balance, prioritizing a work-life balance?
Sure. I think accountability is huge. So when it comes to setting boundaries, I literally like even with my partner, sometimes I have to say, past this time, we don't talk about I don't want to talk about business. And also these certain spaces in the house are reserved for, there's no business or there's no, nothing like that happens, conversation that happens in those spaces, so that there's some separation even in your own home, for you to go and feel some sense of retreat. But I also think accountability, even from friends or colleagues, people that you have to bounce ideas off of and that can hold you to goals and things that whether those are personal or professional, so that we're not moving in a silo. Like we have some support, we have a network of people that are kind of co-signing our dreams, our journey. And they're there to witness, but they're also there to make sure that we're okay and that we're taking care of ourselves. So I would say that support network has been one of the hugest factors of my success as a small business owner, and something I highly recommend to anyone who's kind of starting off.
So good. Accountability is big. I think we even, Tamika has partnered with NCI before, and I think we even talked about this in our interview, having those accountability people who are not co-signing everything you do, who are actually providing a little bit of challenge for you to, should you really take that on? Is that a really good partnership? That's just going to make you think, right? Because if everyone is a yay sayer in your group, then that can lead to the burnout, which can lead to the no spoons. Like, you know, it all kind of works in there. Alex, any practical tips for some of our attendees about managing this work-life balance?
Yeah, I know, again, Sabrina and Tamika touched on boundaries, but I think it is so important. And so I think, you know, often because there's that guilt and that pressure to do more, I think kind of giving yourself permission to be able to take that time off, right? Just even telling yourself like, okay, I have this hour block that I'm going to take for myself, right? Or work, but take for myself. And then after that, you know, I will do work, right? Or I'm taking this hour block to do work, and then after that, it's my rest time, and I've given myself permission to rest, right? And kind of going through that whole process sometimes can kind of help create that separation, right? Of, you know, I've given myself this permission, this is what it's for, so I can use it. So that's one, and then again, you know, as a couples therapist, I think that I definitely go to, like, again, utilizing friends, family, partner, and have, you know, having a safety net, I think is super, super important. And so, you know, if you have a family member or partner, right, to kind of fall back on, you know, it gives you this feeling of like, okay, I can go out there, I can start my company, I can take risks, I can do all these things. And worst case scenario, I come back to my partner, right? I come back to whoever, you know, I have, that's my safe place, right? And I think that that gives you so much more confidence, takes off so much of the anxiety. And I think that, so again, I think that just making sure that that's in place, again, would be something I would definitely emphasize. But yeah, I think that's what comes to mind for me.
That's great. Thank you all. Shifting gears a bit, but staying in the same focus of these practical tips, Yvette, from your standpoint, and Kim, from a lending standpoint, how can someone identify a small business owner or just someone who's looking to make some really strong financial decisions that could, maybe not on the front end, but could on the back end provide a little bit more peace of mind, which will hopefully contribute to them having more of a sound mental health? The first thing I think of is that you all did this generational wealth building and this investment webinar. And that for me, just because I've had the privilege of working with NCI for this amount of time, I've understood now how setting up the future for my children and, you know, for retirement, how that actually is already bringing in some mental health relief. But in what ways have you all seen financial decisions impacting small business owners and their mental health?
That's a great question, Sonia. And I want to talk about it more on an individual and not necessarily a small business owner, but maybe somebody that's thinking about it, or that they don't even know that they're a small business owner, such as like people that are self-employed, babysitters, you know, small things that you can do. For example, right now we just finished tax season. And what are you doing with that refund? That's a conversation that I'm having with some of the families and thinking about what plans can we do with it? Buying bonds, you know, so in the future, you have something on your name or on your children's name. We talk about being able to open a high yield savings account, making our money work for us, as well as taking advantage of some opportunities out there. For example, there is the Cal Kids account for children that are age 0 to going to school up to grade 12. They can get money, free money, investment seed money for their education for the future. And so how are we taking advantage of those resources? I think that that's a very important question that I address with a lot of the families that I work with, and knowing like, what do you want to do about it? And let's talk also about what are some things, what is the burden of the debt that you have, and how can we solve that? How can we take care of that right now? So using those resources, using those investments accounts to work on your favor, so you can get out of debt, so you can buy a house, so you can open your brick and mortar, you know, all of these things, big goals that people have. Really start with just one single step, and knowing how to address your financial needs. It's key.
So
I agree with Yvette. I mean, yeah, in the long run, there's benefits, but right away, right off the bat, when we know that there's something in the background that's not being attended to, right? And we're ignoring it, we're kind of avoiding it, we're not able to address it, there's just this kind of layer of stress that's just there, right? And we've got enough decisions to make, honestly, just as grown-ups. And then if you're a small business owner, you've got a ton of business decisions. Sometimes when we think about finance, whether it's corporate finance, like for your business, or personal finance, it just feels overwhelming. Feels like you should have gone and gotten a whole degree in it. When the truth is, every bit of information learned is really empowering. What Yvette does with New Economics for Women is really individual financial coaching. It isn't business financial coaching. But the truth is, if we haven't kind of learned some of those things that maybe we didn't get from home on the individual financial management side, there's a stress there, right? And I think we feel that it can create an imposter syndrome in business, knowing that we haven't quite gotten our money management down just in our own household yet. So there's an immediate, in my experience, there's an immediate benefit to just even taking a workshop, like even just, oh, I can read the credit report. I know what they're looking for when they look at my credit report now. And that's the kind of workshop that's done all the time in organizations like No Economics for Women, where they're going to just help you understand, or sitting with a financial coach can kind of help you understand, the game. I think of credit cards and stuff like Monopoly. There's a point system to this, and it isn't just what you think it would be, right? It's like, it's beneficial. Look, Dave Ramsey says get rid of all credit cards. I'm not going against Dave Ramsey, but some would say it's beneficial to have a certain amount of lines of credit, right? That gives you a higher score. But the point is, you don't want to take those lines of credit above 30% of their max, ideally 10%, right? Because that also gives you a higher score. Yeah, they want to see that you qualified to get it, but didn't use it. And the more money you have sitting around that you could be using, but aren't using, the higher your score is. So, there's a way to kind of to gain knowledge and then gamify the way we look at it. I mean, we can take different approaches, and I think a coach can help you take different approaches to looking at finance that kind of make it not seem like this big, bad, scary monster, but really like something that you can learn bit by bit. And the more you learn, the more powerful you feel, and the more able you feel to deal with whatever's coming. And so, I mean, there's this old phrase that knowledge is power, right? And I think it's true when it comes to finance. Like, the more that we just allow ourselves to be exposed, there's this myth I've encountered that there's almost this idea that if I learn what those acronyms mean in investing, right? If I learn what 501 IDC 401, 501c3 401k, I know people that don't know the difference between the two. That's cool. I'm saying it in a funny way, but the fact is, it's almost like, don't tell me because I don't want to know, right? But that actually leaves more room for anxiety. I sincerely believe. And what I found is that when people go ahead and sit down with a financial coach, especially a financial coach, because they can go as fast or slow as you need it, right? And answer your direct questions, it really actually stops being as intimidated and starts becoming really approachable, and you can take it in bite-sized chunks. So I think there's an immediate benefit to meeting with a financial coach, just kind of putting it out on the table. You find out they don't go, oh my God, how are you living? We think our finances are the worst, in the world. You find out other people have been in the same situation. There's actually a path forward. And then in the long term, like Sonia mentioned, there's the benefit of kind of breathing and going, oh, I have something like a retirement building. I have some kind of plan for my kid. All of those things in the long run, I think, create a more peaceful backdrop to pursue those goals that we're chasing.
I just want to echo Kim. Everything you said was just like so on point. I think that as far as mental health, shame and self-worth are usually huge factors for why people may not get a small business off the ground. Because if you have shame around your money story growing up, what you learned about abundance or access to resources. If my experience as a woman of color, not coming from a legacy of wealth, where when it was time for me to raise funds, I had to raise close to about $1 million in funding. So I just had to overcome all of the layers first, the mental blocks and layers around even being able to feel worthy of like accessing and knowing that I could garner that amount of money, right? So there are just like layers that the psychology around money and overcoming that barrier so that we can then put ourselves out in the circles with people that have the knowledge and then have the courage to look at the numbers, because that is terrifying to actually look at numbers. But again, this is why programs like New Community Investment and New Economic Center for Women, all these community organizations, that their primary role is to hold the hand to support women and minority business owners. It's just been such a critical game changer for me personally.
It's so good to remember that we all have a baseline of information that we were either raised with or given when we were younger, that if not looked at when we're older, we could go into whatever it might be, whether it's an employee model or whether it's your own business. You go into that with your set of given circumstances. And that's why financial literacy is so important, because you don't know what you're working with until you know that it's either right or wrong, or could be better, or could it be more robust, or maybe I don't know enough. And I know for my family, my mother's side was immigrant, but she had a very, very different life and interaction with money than her given circumstances would. I mean, she did very, very well. And so she didn't have the expectation that she would have the financial literacy that her family had. She did something completely different. And so I think that we need to definitely look back and see what was the baseline that I was taught. And of course, it doesn't help that it's changing all the time, right? Money is changing all the time. Should I do Bitcoin? Should I do traditional this? Things are so ever evolving, and they forever will be. But I think you have to know what your baseline was to know where your financial literacy started, to be able to add the layers that you need for that. And again, like you said, there's no shaming. What your background is what your background is, but there's always room to get better. Thank you for that. I want to close out that section with one last question, and then we're going to head into our Q&A portion. Thank you all so much. Check in. Everybody doing good? How are our attendees? Sarah, do we have some things coming into the chat? Great. Love it. Well, thank you all again so much for attending, taking out, an hour of your day to attend. This is sort of a question for everyone. When we look at the influence of our own network and the influence of our own community and connections that we have. And so the question is that what role can peer support and networking play in helping small business owners cope with owning and running a business, and then hopefully affecting their mental health, whether it be challenges or otherwise? And so there's this beauty in community, right? How can, from your own vantage points, how can peer support and being a part of a community and a network actually help your business, thus helping your mental health?
Just jump in.
Just jump right on in.
I
Sorry
think
about that.
really, really important, because being discerning about who you surround yourself with is also really critical to your success, because you only have so much bandwidth. And especially I'm a single mom, so I had to be really mindful about where I put my time and who I spent my time with. And so finding networks and people that are kind of on a similar frequency, they're also excited about building or evolving, and they're resourced, and they're open, right? I think the difference between being around people like that was huge, especially on those days where I felt like I don't know if I can keep going with this, because it's so hard right? But then I could just pick up I literally would just pick up the phone and talk to someone in that network who would then help to normalize what it is that I might be experiencing and help me to kind of reframe and keep it moving, right? So I think deciding who you're around and being mindful of those relationships that are a little bit more toxic or draining just because you don't have that energy to give is a sacrifice. It's one of the many sacrifices that we do have to make earlier on as a small business owner.
Oh, sorry, I can add to that, but yeah, I was gonna say a big role, you know, I know I touched on like that idea of like having the safety net before, right? Of like, it allows you to kind of go out and take risks knowing that you have people to come back to. But also I think like it's a lot being a business owner and having like so much weight on your shoulders. And so I think just having people you can kind of share that load with, collaborate with, and just not, yeah, being alone in that experience, I think kind of helps take some of that burden. And yeah, I think it was kind of all I was going to touch on. Also, they can be good guides and gauges to your own mental health as well. You know, sometimes when you're really focused into your work and the business and everything, it could be go, go, go. And so I think that oftentimes like your peers and support network can often spot when you're heading toward burnout, maybe even better than you would. So having those kind of people in check to kind of say, hey, you know, we're noticing a shift here, can sometimes be really beneficial. And so, yeah, that's what I was gonna add.
So good. Yvette, from your standpoint, when you are working with the entrepreneurs and the families, how are you, if at all, how are you advising them in building their network and building their community and some other, you know, just sort of the old saying, it takes a village to raise a family. How are you encouraging these families to grow their own network and their collaboration so that in hopes it will help their businesses and their mental health?
That's such a great question. One of the things that I've noticed around the communities that I work with is that we have a lot of first immigrant communities, like they're here for the first time. And so building a network or a community here, it's not existing. Um, they don't speak to their neighbors. They definitely do not speak to anybody at school. And so knowing that, what are they interested in? We actually have a support group. We started a support group here at New Economics for Women for that same reason, because we noticed that there's a lot of parents that come in here, and also business owners, entrepreneurs, self-employed people that they just need a place to just vent and just talk and just say, I'm not the only one that feels like this. You know, I don't feel judged. I can talk about it um, in the language that I want to speak as well. So that's major, and we notice that that's so beneficial for them to know also that their experiences coming to this country as a first time immigrant, you know, learning from what the other people are doing, it's so beneficial to them. And we've noticed that they build those connections, and now we see them coming in together and having that support buddy, you know, like, oh, I'm gonna go talk to the lady that I met in that other class, like she gave me her number, she knows about this, so I'm gonna go and talk to her about coupons and things like that. So I see it, it's so beneficial to have that and to announce that and to have a space where you're not judged, where you can speak freely, and where you could just, like I said, you could just vent. So definitely it's super helpful to have something like that. And I think that we need to recognize it more. We need to open those conversations more. We definitely need to announce it more, like, hey, come to this group. And I think that that's what's needed. A lot of people also have a lot of barriers. They're like, no, I don't know about this. I don't trust this right now. I just came here, or like I'm just learning about this. Wait up, let me slow down. So we give them the opportunity to come in at any time. It's open for everybody. So that's definitely a great resource for a lot of the communities that we work with.
That's so great. And how alone feeling someone might be when there's so many layers of unknowns, right? Obviously language, first thing, right? I feel like I already can't communicate with people, therefore I'm already limited. So what a great resource that you all are providing, and we're happy to be a part of the family over here at NCI. For those of you who are our attendees, you can see in the chat that we've dropped some websites to some of the things that our thought leaders have been talking about. So feel free to take a snapshot or open up all the windows. When you click on them, they're hyperlinked. You can get to the website if you're interested in anything like that. And before we move to the question and answer portion, for our mental health professionals, if you wouldn't mind dropping into the chat just your website, just a link to your website. I want to make sure that people feel like they have, and of course attendees, no pressure at all to reach out to a mental health provider. But if you are interested in one, we want to, make our panelists available by way of providing services to you if you need, or if there's any other type of resource that you believe in, that you stand by, feel free to put that in the chat. Well, that concludes this sort of question and answer from me anyway, to our guests. We now want to open this up to our attendees. And so I'm going to toss to our wonderful chat moderator, Sarah, and if you can guide us through some of those questions that we have in the chat.
Yes, thank you everybody for sharing and just answering those questions. So I'm gonna let you know what our listeners are interested in learning about. So one of our listeners asked, what do each of you do to manage your self-care that you would recommend others to do? And anyone can jump in.
I'll share a very practical thing that I do that's kind of an anchoring technique, which is I use a hot water bottle every evening, just on my back, or just to kind of calm my nervous system and keep me present. I think with all the excitement and the adrenaline of running a business, it's easy for us, for our time orientation, to always be in the future and to be thinking about the thing that we're building and that's coming. And so very practical somatic tools like putting a warm compressor hot water bottle. I use a couple other things, but that is a great practice for muscle relaxation and just like reminding me that I am here now, this is reality, all is well, that kind of thing.
And so yeah, I was going to piggyback on that. Yeah, same thing for me, is just trying to be as present as possible. I get too stuck in the future, past, and so one way I know is like the senses kind of help. And so going on a walk, really paying attention and being super mindful of, like, what does the wind feel like on my skin? Seeing the colors of the trees and all these different things, and just really paying attention to my body and the senses and how I'm taking them in. I would say it's a big one. Yeah, I would say, and then other than that, all the things we talked about, boundary setting and stuff like that, in relationship. Super fortunate to have a wife who's also a therapist, and so we definitely can relate to everything we go through. So yeah, I'd say those are mine.
Yeah, I try to limit my screen time. I usually try to put down the phone for like an hour or two, just so that way, and like also not watch TV or basically any screens for a little bit. And I kind of engage in different sorts of hobbies. Like for me, sometimes I'll embroider or I'll build Legos or something. But just sort of disconnecting from the online side of things and getting a little more tactile. So the sensory component is really helpful with grounding and sort of letting myself zone in on something else that still feels kind of productive in a way, because I'm making something. So that's something that helps me. And then also doing some mindfulness meditations and things like that. Body scans really helpful with just sort of identifying what's going on inside of me and what can I then do about what's going on there.
So
What I
good.
try to do,
Great.
sorry.
Did someone else want to jump
Go,
in?
go ahead, Yvette.
What I wanted to say that I try to do now that I'm a mom, I have an 8-month-old baby, And so I'm new on this momhood, motherhood life. And one of the things that I practice definitely is not using my phone around my baby, making sure that I'm staying present in the moment, that I keep work at work, and that things that are happening at home, I give it priority. But then, when life happens, people call me, I sometimes have to, I'm thinking about X, Y, and Z. So I try to remind myself, like, let's focus, do some breathing exercises, as well as being good to myself, knowing, like, you know what, today's it's a bad day. I think I'm having a really hard time, and talking to my partner about that, and finding help like that, and also celebrating small wins, like today. Doing this presentation, it's a big win for me. So celebrating small wins is definitely how I take care of myself and practice my well-being.
So good. I have two.
Yeah.
So self-care Saturday, I got two. I got one for the mental health and the small business owner. So self-care Saturdays are a thing for me. Most of the time I try to like create a spa feel in my bathroom. So we got the candle, we got the music. I mean, I'm like Burke Williams is in the house. That's what I do. But sometimes I'm not able to make it a spa day. So my self-care Saturday might just be, I'm going to lounge and veg. I'm going to do the starfish on the couch the entire morning long and, watch 90s movies. I mean, it's just self-care Saturday, whatever that might be. And then on the business side, for our business owners, when and not if you ever become available, but when you become available to hire an assistant, and I don't know if this is necessarily I'm not a financial coach professionally, so that may believe differently. But when you have capacity from a finance and a capital standpoint, invest in an admin, invest in an assistant, because that's the first thing I hired as a small business owner, is I hired someone to help me. There's so many ways that you could utilize that little capital that you have to start up. But depending on where you are in life, and you may not need this, I'm a mom, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a that. And it was really helpful for me to have help to start my business. And so that would be that also helps to play into your mental health as well. So. All right, next one, Sarah.
Yes. Okay. So another question we got, what are some effective ways for small business owners to cope with setbacks and failures in a way that protects their mental well-being? And again, anyone can jump in to answer this one.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yes. So what are some effective strategies for small business owners to cope with setbacks and failures in a way that protects their mental well-being?
So coping mechanisms, great.
Mhm.
Alex, how about you? Do you have any suggestions for those?
Yeah, I think usually what I would recommend is maybe like reframing your view of what success is, especially for a business owner, right? Like, is success as a business owner, that you're doing the work, right? You're putting yourself out there, you're trying new things, you're taking risks, right? And so kind of like, again, or is it based on, how many products you sell or whatever your business is about? And so I think that making sure that you have a goal that you have control of, I think for one, is really, really important. And so, but yeah, if you can redefine success as like, I was successful because I put myself out there, right? And so, yeah, I would say that's kind of what first comes to mind.
I think it's kind of what Alex is saying as far as the reframe, even just the idea of failure. Like, I'm now really eager to know what's not going to work so that I can get on with the business of like finding the thing that's going to work. So I don't even see failure in the same way. It's trial and error, and it's just about kind of tinkering and testing until you find the right path.
I would agree with that, for sure. Sorry about that, by the way. I like left and came back. But stable connections. Um, those questions kind of go together for me because for self-care, well, yes, practically. I drink water. I actually track things like water and caffeine because if I get caught up in my workload, I don't eat or drink water, and then I don't feel well. But I also take some time. I try to take some time every morning before my children wake up. Welcome Yvette to this soon. I in the quiet time before they wake up, I'll do just kind of, like spiritual health stuff. So I'll try to find some door that I can close, which is not easy the more kids you have. And then you meditator, prayer, Sometimes I'll play some music, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's just I need like sensory deprivation. But to just be still and kind of I find that there's a lot of reframing that happens in that place, a lot of rolling off of anxiety, and a lot of like, oh, okay, realizing, right, what I wasn't seeing when I was in the moment running after it, or allowing something to become a learning opportunity. And remembering that, like, everyone who's experienced, why are they experienced? Because they ran into a bunch of difficulties, learned either by bumping their head or watching someone else bump their head most of the time, and then we go forward to success. So there's a lot of there's billionaires out there that if you follow them on like their social media, the amount of posting they do about how failure is just a stepping stone to success would also encourage you that there's no one who is a great success in business of any kind that hasn't had to overcome a ton of failure. So I totally agree with the reframing deal.
I think also the people that we kind of talked about, like support groups and your support network and like who you talk to about your failures or your setbacks is also really important, because some people might not fully understand what you're needing. Like in the therapy field, there's a lot of ins and outs that go on with therapy that not everybody's going to understand. So if I'm having a hard time, I can't necessarily talk to someone who's not a therapist because they don't understand what's going on in the community and how that works. So I think knowing who to talk to about what's going on for you is also really important, because that can be very comforting to know, like, okay, one, you get where I'm coming from on a level that other people can't, and also you've been through some of the same things and you've come out on the other side, so you know that, like, a lot of, like, again, the reframing as well, like kind of pairing all of that together can be really helpful with managing setbacks and things like that.
So good. This is definitely a conversation that can last for longer than the hour that we have. But we are at the end of today's webinar. Thank you all so much to our panelists for just taking some time out to lend this wealth of knowledge from both mental health as well as finance and small business developing. In the chat, you will see something called Linktree. And that is a link to New Community Investments, our company who's putting this webinar on today. And you can find all of our information there. So it's like a one-stop shop to find everything from our website to our social media to subscribe to our newsletter. And then by the end of today, you will see on our website, you can contact all of our panelists today. We'll have their website there and other ways that you can connect with them if you want to pursue this further. We don't need the conversation to end here just because this webinar is stopped. So please seek out the resources that you find yourself needing. Hopefully this has, blessed you in some way, provided some kind of knowledge that you didn't have before to be able to not only get a hold on your business. I know you're riding the train now, but you're doing it, you're killing it, but also to usher in more mental well-being for yourselves. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you to our panelists, and everyone be well. Thanks so much.